The Killzone franchise had a rough start on the PlayStation 2, but the developers really hit the mark with the sequels for PlayStation 3. With fun and satisfying gameplay and stunning visuals for their time, Killzone 2 and 3 are easily two of the best shooters for the system. The series would continue with the release of Killzone Mercenary for the Vita and Killzone Shadowfall for PlayStation 4, both released in 2013. Shadowfall proved to be another financially successful entry and is also one of the best-selling games for the system. Developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Computer Entertainment, Killzone Shadowfall was released as a launch title for PlayStation 4 in November 2013. The PS4 was an interesting launch for me because the two launch titles I got ended up landing on opposite sides of the spectrum. Shadowfall was one, and the other was Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I was very disappointed with Shadowfall and thought Black Flag was the best game since Assassin's Creed 2. After I beat Shadowfall's story, I never went back to it and forgot almost everything about the campaign. Since it's been a while, I was a little eager to jump back in to see if it's really as bad as I remember. This review will contain some spoilers, so if you're sensitive to spoilers, now is the time to stop watching. You have been warned. Now let's take a look at Killzone Shadowfall and see if it truly is disappointing. After the events of Killzone 3, the ISA allows Helghast survivors to colonize half of the planet Vecta, and that half is known as New Helghan. A wall is constructed to separate the two civilizations due to their resentment of each other. Years later, with the assistance of a shadow marshal named Sinclair, Michael Kellen and his son Lucas, who is also the game's protagonist, sneak through New Helghan to reach the wall. After Michael is killed by the Helghast, Sinclair looks after Lucas, and he ends up becoming a shadow marshal himself.
Passage. Please. I've got my son with me. We're unarmed. Hey, stop! Stop! We can't do this. This is our home, too!
No!
After an explosion kills several soldiers and civilians in VSA headquarters, Lucas is sent on a mission to locate the leader of the Black Hand terrorist group, who claims responsibility for the attack. He ends up allying himself with a half-Vectan, half-Helghast woman named Echo to prevent another war, and to stop Johann Stahl, who survived the events of Killzone 3, from using a bioweapon that would kill both Vectans and half-breeds alike. The story, tone, and atmosphere all feel very different than what was on display in the previous games, and I do think it's refreshing. The plot of Shadowfall definitely feels more intimate, like a post-war scenario, but most of the characters failed to interest me.
You're different. I know the Helghast better than they know themselves. They have an essence, something you lack.
So, right off the bat, I'm going to say, I'm still not a fan of Shadowfall. After about an hour of playing, I started to remember why I thought it was disappointing. On the surface, there's really nothing wrong with the game. In my experience, it controls well, movement feels good, the gunplay is satisfying, and the action is fun when it gets going. The problem lies with some general design issues, and the fact that it's supposed to be a Killzone game, and the latter is what disappointed me the most. I think your enjoyment of the campaign may come down to your answer to one question. What do you expect from a Killzone game? If you expect a lot of run-and-gun action, explosive set pieces, and intense combat, Shadowfall may disappoint. Shadowfall focuses more on options and stealth. You have the option to engage enemies all guns blazing or sneak around. Now, I respect the developers taking the franchise in a different direction instead of doing the same old thing again, but I don't think this was the way to go. I'll start by talking about some of the positives. The environments in Shadowfall are linear, but much more open-ended than any of the locations in the previous games. You're basically always given a choice of how you want to proceed, and that doesn't just mean in terms of engagement. Whether you sneak around and perform stealth kills or shoot your way through areas, there's typically multiple ways to reach destinations. When the action does get going, it is a lot of fun. The guns feel great to fire, and melee and stealth kills often look and feel brutal. Lucas can use a tactical echo to see where nearby enemies are located, and inject himself with adrenaline to replenish health, which also enables him to enter slow motion for a brief time. One of the bigger elements of the campaign is the hovering attack drone called the Owl. Lucas can deploy it to attack and stun foes and deploy a shield and zipline. It can also hack terminals, alarms, and revive Lucas if he falls, as long as he has adrenaline on him. The Owl does prove to come in quite handy during combat. It will distract foes, allowing you to flank and get the jump on them, and the stun attack can disable an enemy's energy shield, making them vulnerable. Now, unfortunately, the negative aspects overshadow the positive ones. For one thing, the pacing is inconsistent. There are periods of downtime that go on for a little too long, in my opinion, like when you're forced to slowly walk through an area or ride something. The set pieces that are present aren't all exciting, and some encounters are tedious or frustrating. There's a section later in the game that requires you to disable mobile scan units, which can unleash projectiles at you if you're spotted. So you'll want to evade them and look for canisters to insert into generators so you can blow them up to destroy the units. That may mean shooting the drones that fly by, forcing them to drop the canisters they're carrying. I don't find any of this to be enjoyable, and the big walking attack drones that patrol some of these areas make the already tedious task more frustrating. Shadowfall doesn't offer a lot of large-scale battles like its predecessors. There's a major battle in the beginning that's pretty cool, and some defense objectives that will involve a lot of shooting, but for the most part, encounters feel smaller in scale. They get a little bigger towards the end of the game, but I can't say any encounter ever reached the same highs as those in Killzone 2 or 3. It's obvious you're encouraged to sneak around, but firefights do look and feel great, which at this point is not unexpected for a Killzone game. You'll spend a majority of your time alone and in enemy territory, so don't expect to see and hear a lot of distant gunfire and explosions, tons of shouting, and general chaos. Now, there are several sections in the game that are simply boring. There's a chapter early in the campaign that has you running around a spaceship looking for canisters to insert into generators so you can progress. Another chapter includes a segment that has you being guided through a prison. You're told when to avoid enemies and exactly where to go. It's not very exciting. Then there's the set pieces, many of which are just underwhelming. You'll hang from a rope attached to an aircraft and kill a couple of enemies. You'll free fall and have to avoid obstacles like structures and buildings. And one of the more exciting ones has you floating around space protecting a shuttle. The campaign will take you to many areas around the planet Vecta, including sections of Vecta City and New Helgen. The more open-ended environments allow for different approaches, and it can be easy to wander off in the wrong direction. Luckily, you can bring up an objective marker on your HUD so you know where to go. Most encounters take place in big spaces and/or with plenty of routes to take, and objects and structures around to use as cover. The environments are diverse and detailed, and the numerous collectibles scattered around are the incentive to explore. Shadowfall does come with a multiplayer component, and I actually found some games, but not many players, so I can't really comment on the experience. It also comes with bot zones, so you can play against bots. The game did receive DLC, including a big expansion called Intercept, which centers on cooperative play. You and up to 3 other players must secure and defend uplinks and can rack up points. It seems pretty cool, but I didn't find any players online, so I can't really comment on this either.
Frag on the way! Ready to body switch.
Visually, Shadowfall looks great, and I still think the presentation holds up rather well. It looks slick and clean, and you'll get to see some beautiful backdrops and vistas. Despite the overall tone and atmosphere feeling different than those of the previous games, some of the gritty style is carried over, which helps make it feel connected, if that makes sense. The gameplay is backed up by what sounds like techno-influenced tunes and electronic beats that actually work really well in terms of heightening the tension. I should mention I did play this on a PlayStation 5, and cannot say I encountered many issues with the performance. In fact, once I disabled the 30 FPS lock, it ran silky smooth. The only major issue I encountered was a crash when loading a save. Other than that, no problems. I don't know what the general consensus on Shadowfall is, but personally I think it's By the time I reached the halfway point in the campaign, I was ready for it to be over. And that's a shame, because it's really not a terrible game, but it's not great either. My issue is that it not only doesn't match the excellence of Killzone 2 and 3, it doesn't even come close. Now, I can't knock the developers for trying something new to keep things from becoming stale, I respect that. But this is just underwhelming. The Owl is a cool addition, but it definitely doesn't carry the experience. If you strip away Shadowfall's connection to the Killzone franchise, I think this would be an average or above average game at best. The gunplay, open-ended environments, and stealth are all enjoyable. These things make for a decent game. But this is a Killzone title, and Killzone 2 and 3 are certainly better than decent. I want to charge into war zones and blow shit up, shoot a ton of baddies with friendlies by my side, and fly around in a jetpack and mow down foes from the skies. Most of that stuff is gone. I don't even mind the bigger focus on stealth, but there's a lack of adrenaline here, not to be confused with the in-game pickup. There's a lack of rush, a lack of excitement, a lack of high-octane action that helps define the series. I would only recommend Killzone Shadowfall if you can find a cheap copy, but I have a hard time recommending it to fans of the franchise. Now, I want to be clear and say it's not a horrible game. It has problems, but there are far worse games out there. As a Killzone title, it's just very disappointing and underwhelming. It's a follow-up to two examples of excellence, and even Killzone Mercenary, which came out for the Vita a couple of months prior, is a better game in my opinion. Shadowfall is not on par, nor does it even come close to what made the previous game so good. It has the potential, but it never hits the mark.
You're persistent. I respect that. But it's in your nature to lose.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the rest of our channel, follow us at the links below, and you can also support us on Patreon.
If you're interested in more gaming content, check out our friends over at Gamecast.